I'd like to welcome all of you to this Stevens Plantation Improvement Project Dependent Special District Governing Board meeting this Thursday, November the 7th. With that, I'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chairman Matheny.
Here.
Member Cooper.
Here.
Member Askew.
Here.
Member Treese.
Here.
The first item on our agenda is the discussion and a possible action regarding the Stevens North letters of intent. We'll recognize our acting city manager at this point. If you'll share your name.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Veronica Miller,
Thank you.
Deputy City Manager. At the last DSD meeting, the board reviewed multiple offers and reduced the list from 6 to 3 potential buyers. At that time, the board asked for those 3 prospective buyers to return with their best and final offer, as well as make changes to the property and to meet with staff. Staff organized a pre-application meeting for each of the prospective buyers. We included all of the directors and people that could make decisions so that we could have all the right people in the room to have the meetings be as productive as possible. We reviewed the projects, we answered questions, we made a point to emphasize that the city was looking for a fast closing on this property, and the properties were already zoned mixed use. And then following that, we provided requested information, and we followed up through our agent, Mr. Kalkanis. We received the 3 final and best offers, which you were provided in advance of the meeting, and we set up a meeting with the bond holders to review those offers. At that time, the process and what we had done was discussed with the bondholders. We reviewed them, and they supported the equity proposal, and they stated that they were comfortable with equity due to the faster time to close and reduced risk, as the other offers had a rezoning contingency. Therefore, staff also recommends equity with the condition that the city-owned purchase price be increased to $1.75 million. Mr. Kalkanis, our real estate agent, is here also to discuss the offers. And
Good evening, board members. Dave Kalkanis, Colliers International. We are representing, obviously, the city and the DSD property, Stevens North. You all, if you have any questions about any of the offers, please feel free to ask questions. Just as to reiterate what Veronica Miller just stated, it was made very clear to all of the buyers about timing and contingencies and closing. And what it is we had was best and final. Timing was critical because of reasons I'm sure Dan will explain. And these are the offers we received.
Do you have anything else for us?
Not at this time,
All
Mr.
right.
Mayor.
Do we have any questions? Mr.
Well,
Manzares?
Just to follow up on what Mr. Kalkanis said, of course, he's prepared to give you a little synopsis of each one of them if you want to go that route. It's up to the board's pleasure, the pleasure of the board. One of the issues that has always come up on these projects, the Stevens project, in the last several years, is the fact that there's an ongoing CDD assessment and ad valorem taxes on the property. Now, the existing taxes on the ad valorem taxes on this property have been significantly reduced because, as you know, there's been some cattle. We have a cattle lease on the property, and we've got an agricultural classification, which has reduced that. However, the CDD assessment price is the lion's share of the dollars that are assessed against this property on an annualized basis. Based on the numbers we have and on the way the issues have come up, and we've looked at that, we have, based on the outstanding taxes on the property, if the property does not close essentially by March of 2020, an additional $280,000 is going to have to be paid to the tax collector for the 2017 taxes. Okay, so that's a significant reason, and probably one of the biggest reasons why we have moved forward with telling all the offerers the time is of the essence, the time to close is the most important issue. Similarly, the bondholders haven't expressed a similar interest, because obviously this has been going on for a while too, and they'd like to get this closed out as quickly as possible too.
What is the pleasure of the council? Are you wanting to, a brief summary of everything again?
I have a question or two. Dan, run by me the $1,750,000 that's going to be for the city land versus the 5 acres, the swamp. How much is that the swamp land going to go into an account?
Yeah,
How much is it?
I submitted to you, I think you all got copies of estimated net proceeds statements, and I'm
Yes,
kind of,
I got it.
I misplaced mine, I don't know if you have it, I was trying to look it up. But essentially, and of course, this is a city council issue, and I know that it's tough, but you can't talk about, they have to be talked about together, so I recognize that. So essentially what happened was, back in 2006, that 5 acres that you're referring to is property that was essentially located at a point in the Stevens Plantation development where it was privately owned. It wasn't part of the Stevens Plantation
Right.
development. As Stevens Plantation began to develop, and some of what we always refer to as the 4 residential pods started to get developed, and the school site started to get developed over there, the individuals that owned that property and actually lived there came to the city and complained about an extreme amount of flooding. So essentially, they were being flooded out at the time. So at the time, the city was faced with a claim related to basically flooding out this private residence, and they negotiated a sale of their property, including their house. There was a house on the property at the time, and they negotiated a sale for that 5 acres. That 5 acres is part of the total 51 acres that is the city piece. The additional 46 acres is the piece we've always talked about, which is what the city bought a few years back for the public safety and recreational complex. So in 2006, the city paid $510,010, including all the closing costs for that 5 acres. That money was paid out of the general fund. It's important to remember that $500,000 was paid not only based on the value of the property, but essentially at the time the city paid those individuals and compensated those property owners because they were told to move. So it was almost like an eminent domain action where they received some additional compensation because they essentially had to move. And then in 2014, when the city acquired the other 46-acre piece, it paid $1,281,000 for those 46 acres. So the way it would break down based on any of the sale prices is that the prices that for the city piece is about $500,000 of that would go back into the general fund because that's where the money came for that, and about $1,281,000 plus or minus would go back into the impact fee funds. The parks, that would be Parks and Rec fund and the police funds, and it's about I think it's about a 75, or it's actually, the numbers are in there. 960,495 would go into the Parks and Rec fund, and then 325,870 and change would go into the police impact fee, police and fire impact fee.
And Dan, there was no taxable any on those?
No, that property
properties?
is owned by the city, so it's,
So we don't
it's
pay.
there's no taxes. It's not part of the CDD, so there's no assessment on those 5 acres.
So the net of what we're getting is just basically what we just about spent in the last 7, 8 years that we bought the $500,000 5 acres, and then what we spent for the,
The equity,
we're just about even out.
the
right?
equity one is, as it relates to the city piece, is a break even.
For both of them, probably much, pretty close.
No, the other 2 offers that are on table, they have a higher purchase price, so there actually would be, and it's in there.
Well, no, I'm talking about, excuse me, I'm talking about the the 5 acres that we spent $500,000 to buy it, and you're just gonna take
Oh,
that
and,
money?
and the other city, yes, sir.
It's
Yeah, so both
175,
parcels
that's
have-
about just equal, you're not making money, but you're getting it out.
It's a,
getting it back.
it's a break even related to
Okay,
both of those
that was
parcels.
my question. You drew it around, but I was looking for it real quick, but you went around.
I
Okay.
apologize, I'm a lawyer.
Thank you, sir.
You have any other questions?
I think I'm the only one who hears your jokes. Oh.
Are you through,
sorry.
Mr. Cover?
I am, yes, for a second. Go ahead.
Councilmember Matheny?
Thank you. So one of the things that I had brought up when we were reviewing the offers with Ms. Miller was just the fact that right now we have this property that we can put a public safety complex on. And then my concern is letting that go. And then where are we going to do this public safety complex? And we have this public safety workshop all going on right now, which we don't have their recommendations yet. And that was my concern when we were discussing this. And I know that, was he the one on the phone with us? Yes. Okay. I know that, his opinion was we can always find more land, and if we needed to find land, and I said I always have this internal sense of panic where all the land is going to be gone before we turn around. I have this clock in my head ticking. But that's just one of my concerns with making this decision now, is just the fact that I don't know what the recommendation is coming out of that public safety task force and I don't know what the date is for that we're supposed to be getting recommendations.
I believe they have their final meeting coming up, and I think we were anticipating that you would be getting recommendations in December or January, is what I believe was going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't really know how to put those two kind of parallel paths together. I don't know if it's something where we can move forward on the DSD side, but it hasn't come to council until we understand what's happening with that.
Well, I don't think you can delay either part of it, because remember, the city piece was placed into this potential deal as an enhancement to the DSD piece. So all of the offers have looked at the entire 100 just to make sure that both the Titan and the Avex Homes proposals have an option related to a public safety complex being on somewhere on the 183 acres. So both of those have that, and both of their offers had an option related to that.
And just to interrupt there.
Councilmember Trace?
Are we sure that's the best location for it? Like, when it was selected, it was just kind of one of those, a property came up and kind of bought it with impact fee funds. Was that the right location for it, or are we looking at somewhere else being the best location? I just don't know.
I can tell you that the police chief likes that location because it's in the center of town. However, depending on what the ultimate city limits are in the future, the center of town could also adjust based on what the ultimate city limits end up being.
Okay.
Council, you through?
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you. Just another quick question. Dan, I'm back at the total purchase price that's going to go to the BlackRock and to the bondsman, about $4.5 million. Then you and I discussed that, or at least I asked you the question, I think you told me, so I want to just make sure that I'm 100%. The taxes for 17, 18, and 19 are going to come out of this $4.5 million. $4.5 million is going to be, basically, the bondsmen are going to get somewhere around 3.3, 3.4.
Well, at the equity piece, which is $4.5 million, we are estimating, based on the final value of the CDD-B bonds, which we'd have to get an estoppel there, that the net proceeds would be about $2,843,000. However, and I think this is where you're going, Mr. Cooper, that CDD-B bond assessment also gets paid to the bondholders, essentially. That's money that goes back to them to pay on the principal and the interest on those bonds. So the total the total amount that they would get out of that closing is probably, in fact, probably about, about $3,700,000.
I missed it a couple.
$3,500,000.
I missed it a couple $100,000, sorry.
Oh, you're right. I was just confirming it.
Okay, and, well, I just want to make sure that,
But on your tax issue, though, that's what I mentioned earlier. The question about whether the taxes is going to come out is going to depend on the closing. Again, those 2017 taxes have to be paid.
as long as we
in
get
the-
it done before the.
Yes, sir.
March, next
So,
March.
so if the closing doesn't happen before then those 2017 taxes will not be paid out of the closing, the ultimate closing. They will have already been paid by the city.
How much money have we saved, just give me an idea, since, I think it was last year when I kind of really pushed kind of hard to get this turned into agriculture instead of where it was before.
I believe,
How much money have we saved?
this is about, was it about $45,000, I think? I'm sorry, Wendy? Yes. So
Got it
about
exactly, okay.
$46,000 in the ad valorem piece since we've had the cattle lease on the property.
So I was able, by my pushing to get that done last year before the end of December, we got it and saved about $45,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Well, I certainly share Councilmember Matheny's concern about giving up that property, but I share an even bigger concern, having sat here just in the short time I've been here for 3 years, and seeing all the money that we're constantly paying out that could have been spent on another piece of property or a safety complex, holding on to that larger piece of property. And to me, it just doesn't make sense to continue to hold on to a piece of property that's just dragging us down financially, when that money could be certainly invested much wiser than what we're doing now. And just to continue spending money to hold on to it doesn't make sense to me. And so that's the reason I would support the whole deal. Any other questions or discussions?
One more quick. Very-
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, very quickly. Veronica, I think I'd ask the questions of the complex that we've got right now for the police department. We've got some property in back of the police department. How many acres have we got there that's Battaglia? Possibility could buy that, purchase?
You asked that
I asked you 2 or 3 different questions.
the
the
property
street even.
across the street, and we reached out to Ms. Thacker to ask what the purchase price was, and she has not returned our phone call on that.
That was about 100 acres, 104 acres, 100 acres.
I believe so, yes, yes.
You could turn that into a major complex of everything that we wanted, all wrapped in one.
Depending on
Okay.
what that price was, it's a large piece of developable property, yes.
Or I'm speaking about to the west, right in back of the police department.
To the west, Mr. Sturgeon has, and I believe Mr. Kalkanis also has previously spoken to the Battaglias about potentially that property being purchased in the future, and the city could expand onto that and be able to keep our existing buildings where the police station is right now. I believe Mr. Battaglia, though, gave the impression that he wanted to sell the southern piece first before discussing that further.
That's where my discussion with, I think with you and with Mr. Sturgeon was trying to, if they want to sell that, the first thing is 100 acres, 104 acres. Maybe we could consider looking at that instead of, if it's still on the market right now.
Yeah, and staff was waiting to hear back from Ms. Thacker. I don't know if they're, no? So,
I can tell you, Board Member Cooper, that the price will be cost prohibitive for Battaglia, for the Battaglia piece.
What about in back of, on the west side then?
It's also the same. It's not it's a great site, but it's a difficult group to work with.
he did imply when he met with the city manager, I believe Mr. Askew may have been there also, that he did want to work with the city and that he was interested in working with us on that. We just have to wait.
Right, they
Is
want to
that
wait
right,
until
Mr.
after,
Askew?
That's pretty much correct.
Okay.
they want to wait till after the first of the year to see where they are with the development and the platting of the 105 acres. So the 28 acres next to the current police department is for sale, but it's at a very high price, like between $250 and $300 an acre.
Okay,
But we haven't gotten into any real negotiations with various options and sort of thing, so.
I got you. All right, thank you, sir.
Do we have any other discussion? Questions? No? Could I entertain?
Mr. Chairman, of course, there are representatives of each one of the offers here if you have any questions of them.
I'd like to hear.
Councilmember Matheny?
Thank you. I wanted to go over, also, when I had my review, I had asked Dan, Mr. Manzares, to prepare these estimated net proceeds, because I wanted to kind of see the bottom line number and things, when I had that. I also wanted him to include in this, was any cost the city was expected to bear, like, and you'd see on the bottom of all these, they have that, they're, wanting the city to give mobility fee impacts credits for the construction of the road, which has me a little concerned. I did speak with
Yeah.
Mr. Manzares about it earlier,
Yep.
and, you know, if we were to go down that path, I would want it to be limited, a cap to it, like the 1.5 is the cap. So regardless of however much it costs to build this, you know, and I don't know if anybody's agreed on what the section looks like, or what the, you know, right-of-way width is, or what, you know, amenities, landscaping, things like that. But I would want our exposure to have a cap to it. And so that was just something I know we hadn't really discussed. I know when Mr. Manzares and I talked about it, it was, when it comes back to us, it will be all written out in a contract, and we can kind of
Right.
have those discussions. But that's just from my perspective. I would like to see the mobility fees have a cap to it, and then also, I would also want to understand what the road's going to look like, because I don't want to get into the fight of, we were expecting a boulevard, and then, you know, what we get is 2 lanes of a 4-lane section, or some kind of craziness. Like, you know, I would want all that spelled out as well.
Gravel road.
Councilmember Trace?
I was just going to make sure that you brought that up, because I know that's one of your sticking points, and then just include that as the motion, because I think all 3 of the options were asking for mobility fee credits for the road. It was a part of the previous application as well, so might as well just make it part of the motion to have that cap in there.
Have it capped.
Yeah.
Well, and that's fine.
City, yeah.
On the city piece, but that, you're actually not, that piece would be part of the agreement between, and the city and the prospective buyer, as well as a developer's agreement associated with it. I think all 3 of the applicants were well aware of the previous developer's agreement that the city had entered into with regard to this connector road between Budinger and Canoe Creek. So that was the model that they were following, I believe. I would only assume. 2 of them actually referenced it specifically in their offers, that they would want to have a developer's agreement substantially similar to that agreement. So, but we certainly we'll continue to work with it when we bring it back. So any input you want to give us now would be very helpful, so that we can go through it during the negotiations.
Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you. Well, Dan, and how much impact credits we're looking for that road? Did you figure it out exactly how much, or you,
Well, again, we were working off of the prior agreement.
from Galleria? Are you talking about Galleria?
The Galleria agreement had a provision in it for about $1.5 million in mobility fee credits, 1.45 or
1.451,146
Exactly.
and 55 cents.
so. I told it, numbers lawyer. So that's what we worked with, Mr. Cooper. That's where that information came from. That was on those sheets that I gave you.
This would be pretty much like Lynette has mentioned, that it's gonna be nice with,
Well, remember, and Veronica maybe I'll come back. This is a project. This connector road has been in the design phase for a while.
Long time, yeah.
And it's fairly well designed, as I understand it. And the city had an outside engineer plan the road, and it's designed. So it's always been on the horizon. It's always been something that the city has been looking for this
will
area.
this have sidewalks on both sides, or one side, or no side, or
I don't know.
somebody tell me a little bit about that?
It's a boulevard section with sidewalks on both sides.
Yes,
You got it?
yes, and we had 100% construction plans, and I believe I emailed them.
You probably did, but I
To
didn't.
you. it was a nice roadway meeting the mixed-use design standards, as
Okay.
I remember.
All right,
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I guess so we just let's get consensus that everybody agrees to have a detailed section and a detailed description, regardless of which one we choose,
see
detailing
it.
obligations. I just live with these agreements on the backside, so I'll tell you the slippery things is, oh, utilities are gonna run down it. Well, we didn't include utilities. You know, like to really detail exactly what is gonna be in the section and
That's good.
whose obligation it is.
So what are you asking us to agree
let's get
to?
it done.
Do you guys all agree you would like to see that
Let's do it
detailed
all.
in the
Yes.
agreement?
Yeah, we're
Get it
hearing
all.
that loud and clear when we
Gotcha.
come back to that developers
Yes.
agreement
I'll
piece.
put it in with all of
And
it.
again, all three of them have that same condition as part of their offer, so that's something that would go across the board regardless of what they.
But
what
she
they-
also talked about a cap. Do all three have a cap?
No, I was
She
wanting
brought
it
that.
to
That's
have
what
a
I'm
cap.
saying. You are.
Yeah, are you guys all
Yes.
agreeing with this? Okay.
What cap are you looking for
The
specifically?
1.5 that's in
1.5?
Councilmember Askew.
So I have a question. You could probably answer it for me, and I had the numbers, but I don't have them right now. Commercial, the commercials, what I was reading is based under acreage. Some were 3, 5, and higher than that number. But there's no square footage of what that commercial is going to be. So we're just saying that it's going to be 3 acres. 3 acres could equal the same as 15 acres. It depends on what you're putting in that spot.
Exactly.
Can we
Or
get some
ratio?
kind of clarification of what the square footage of commercial is? Because it's hard for me to believe that 3 acres or 15 acres or 11 acres. Is there something more that
Well,
the developers
generally-
know what they're going to be building there?
Well, generally, until we see what the market demand is, the market will tell us what needs to go there. So it's hard to come back and say, we're gonna have 3 acres, or we're gonna have 5, or we're gonna have, basically, the rule of thumb is about, for 50 acres, you're gonna probably have, 500,000 square feet. So if you got 10 acres, you're looking somewhere in that range of 15 or 20,000 square feet. So, I mean, it depends on what the market says. We haven't marketed it as retail at this point, or commercial, or office, or any of those uses. And that's when we come back and we enhance our site plan. And
Okay.
then we find that out, or at least we see what the market says within the first 60 to 90 days.
Okay, do we know what the 3 acreage, the 3 different developments, what the acreage is per commercial? I see, next part's going to be parks, but.
I
that's the
think on
paper.
page 5 of Titans, you have the acreage on their presentation.
Right, so you have 11.46 for Equity, Titan is 7.3, and then AVEX is 3 acres. So
We
if
got
we're,
there's a little chart we can probably put up on the.
I did a chart.
I had that, and then Keith gave it to me.
Yeah, I did though, just to clarify, the property that showed as mixed use, I put that in the non-residential / commercial category. It could have more though.
Right.
It could have residential in there though.
So that's sort of like the hole in our mixed-use ordinance is that we really don't have, we throw at acreage, but that doesn't tell us anything. We really don't know what it is, it 2,500 square feet, is it? So, that's something I think with the city we need to work on, is exactly what that percentage would be, so we don't have to get up here and go, oh, I'm approving it because it's
Is it?
11.46 acres. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be all commercial in that area. It could be a shed there, couldn't it? Accessory structure could be
I
there.
hope not.
But, and then the second part to it is that there's parks here, and then some have 10 acres of land for parks and 1 acre and 4 acres of, so I don't know if everybody's keeping that in consideration as well, so.
And the smaller one actually was marked as open space.
Okay,
So again, Councilmember Askew, you have to remember, all of this, what was presented in their LOIs, is conceptual.
right.
And everything's got to be approved, and they got to fine tune everything as they move down the road as far as what they're going to do.
Right.
And it's all about market demand. Market's going to drive the project.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't want them to have to come back and all of a sudden be, whoa, wait a minute. So we're just kind of having that quick discussion up here, so whoever we do pick, they kind of know the feeling of council, what's going on up here, so. I
Understood.
just want to bring that up.
Councilmember Cooper.
Dan, are we even thinking about Titan here? I mean, they've changed the ball down the road yesterday or the day before.
Well,
What happened here? Tell me so everybody understands and where we're at.
okay, well, I think you're referring to the AVIC. So, and we were going to ultimately get this issue apparently. So what, as David and Veronica pointed out, based on the direction of at the DSD, the last DSD meeting, we had the individuals, we narrowed it down, you narrowed it down to 3 offers. We told the 3 officers, you're going to offers, meet with staff, come back in and provide your final and best offer as to the project based on, after meeting with staff and what you can do there. One of the offers, the equity piece, simply put in there as one of their contingencies that they would have to go through a concept plan revision, which would basically take, there's an approved concept plan for this project that was done through the Galleria process, that they would have to come back and revise it. That is a one-step process in front of the city council. They bring in their revised plan, they show it to staff, and it comes in front of the city council as without at a regular council meeting. The other 2 put in as contingencies that they would have to go through the plan unit development process, which, as you know, is basically a rezoning process. So they put that in as a contingency to close on the project. That's what was submitted in the letters of intent that we received. We've had discussions, Veronica and I have had discussions with the representative of AVEX afterwards, who indicated to us that they felt that their proposal was intended to be similar to the equity proposal, although in the fact of not necessarily requiring a plan unit development rezoning for the project. But again, that's what was contained in the letter of intent, so we move forward with that. We have, and that's what you're referring to there, Mr. Cooper. So, again, we reviewed these offers at the staff level, Mr. Kalkanis, and we also reviewed it with the bondholders based on the letters of intent that were received and on the contingencies that were set forth in them.
And if I may, just to point out, when we met with them, with staff, we made a point to state that this was mixed-use zoning. However, we advised everyone to go back and look at the land development code and review the mixed-use zoning and determine if that would suit their project. Therefore, we relied on the LOIs and what was written in the LOIs.
But they just came back 2 days ago and said, yes, they could do the same thing as Galleria also, right? With,
I think they may want to.
I think, yeah,
to-
we had that conversation with the representatives. They're here if you want to ask them that question. I think that's how
okay,
we'd rather
they
handle it.
raised their hand, I'd like to ask them.
Is Titan here? Would Titan like to speak to this issue?
Councilmember Askew, also just as a rule of thumb for commercial, it's about 10,000 square foot per acre
Okay.
of commercial retail.
And, Mr. Chairman, since we were talking about our conversation with AVEX, maybe we can let the representative of AVEX address that piece first, and then we can go back.
Okay, I'll have them up next.
So Eric Marks, Avex Homes and Avalon Park Group. Do you need an
You with
address and
Avex?
all that stuff? Yes. Are we going to give a formal presentation or just answer questions? I can quickly answer that one, or I'd like to talk a little bit more. It's,
Well, at this point, I
Sir.
think based on Mr. Cooper's question, he'd like to know an answer to that.
so
Question.
the answer is that I'm a lawyer, and I poorly worded that LOI. I don't think a PUD is needed. So what we said in the letter of intent was that we needed the conceptual plan approved and a PUD. There's no PUD that's necessary, so it's essentially the same thing. It's that that we need the conceptual plan approved. It'd be on the same timeline. Interestingly, I've heard too, and not that it changes much, but this is not a formal bidding process like through a governmental body. There's clearly going to be some negotiation in this. I've heard a request for an additional payment on the county's property, or excuse me, the city's property. And so regardless of whether there was word issues, I think there's an opportunity. If there's things in our offer, I think what you should do is pick the best offer that you think is closest. And all these issues that you're talking about, pick that buyer, whether it's us or somebody else, and hammer home all those issues. Because I think, we're offering $800,000 more, and the fact that we put the word PUD into the letter of intent when there's no PUD necessary seems to have shifted this process in a different way.
Drove it the wrong direction.
Yeah. So-
Okay, the last question, I guess, is how quickly before you would have some hard money and how quickly you could close?
It'd be 90 days to have we'd put up a relatively small initial deposit. We could put up our hard money,
Small. Tell me small.
10,000, I think is what the offer was. I think that's pretty consistent, maybe,
I think we're looking at the other one. Walensky is quite a
Well,
bit.
and
well, that's after the inspection period, and then we'd be at about
It's
100.
90 days, though.
Right, at the end of the 90 days, then we'd be at about $100,000.
You're
And
still
again,
a
that's,
couple hundred short.
excuse me?
You're still a couple hundred short. Go
Well,
ahead.
and again, if that's a big issue, we can work through that. And then
It
it
is
sounds
with
like, and then it sounds like, from a closing, it sounds like it'd take probably, we would commit to get a conceptual plan very quickly into the city. It'd come before you guys sitting as the city council, and then we would be ready to close shortly after, within 30 days after the city council approved.
You'd have to make before the March next year.
I think that's clearly doable. We would try to get a conceptual plan in before the end of the year.
All right.
Again, I heard loud and clear from this council what they wanted to see. I would love an opportunity to show you a little bit how we've changed our plan to try to accommodate you. So I'll let you have your discussion, but I really would appreciate an opportunity. We've put some time and effort and expense into it to at least show you what we
wanna-
want to do and let you guys make a decision.
Yeah, can we allow all three to make a brief?
Yeah, if you want to talk some more.
Well,
Okay.
why don't we, because from staff, remember this, and I'd ask your indulgence on this, because we looked at these as were directed by the Dependent Special District or based on the letter of intents that were received. So we seem to be getting clarifications of the letter of intent, which sort of, from the staff's perspective, I think we'd want to hear what Titan has to say about this too, so we can have a
Yes.
good discussion
Yeah,
about
I
this.
think all three, yeah.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
three.
But this particular issue, before you start diving into other stuff, because that was the salient issue that we looked at on staff with the bondholders, was the time for closing on this project.
Am I correct that this is not a formal bidding process?
not.
So, I mean, I think there's some leeway. You should work as hard as you can to get the best deal you can.
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
not subject to bidding requirements.
Thank you.
So you want me to?
It's
For
Titan.
now.
Thank you.
And to clarify, Mayor, they do have presentations that we have loaded ready.
Good evening, it's Dale Avery, Titan Properties, and it was the same issue with our letter of intent. We should have put concept plan revision instead of PD. We based all our layouts and our proposal, our overall plan based on the mixed-use district. That was a typo on our part.
But your commercial, the parcel that you're would build what you had shown us is not near as big, I don't think, as the original one we've got with Equity.
I'm sorry?
I think there's a difference in size of commercial square footage, what you were gonna build versus Equity was gonna build.
In our plan, we gave two proposals. One, leaving that 16-acre complex out where the city would have access to it to maybe make some parks or softball courts or things like that. And in the future, be able to maybe build a municipal complex if the city thought that was the place to put it. Or we felt like we could add some value if we developed the rest of the property, and you'd have utilities and things there next to the site, if you found a better site and you later wanted to sell it. The commercial, we have less commercial, but we also had a senior living component in the proposal as well. We felt like that probably would serve the community better than having more commercial.
If I may clarify, Titan actually was in the middle regarding the square footage of commercial.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Okay. So Avex was just smaller,
Smallest.
Yes.
okay. But you were
Any other
gonna,
questions?
you were gonna take part of that 16 acres and you could have turned that into parks and stuff like that, that the other two weren't gonna do that?
Well, we offered the city two proposals, one where we buy the whole thing like the other two parties, or that we would carve out the 16 acres. And we valued that 16 acres as the same as we did with the city property on a per acre basis, and said the city could keep that 16 acres. And in the future, have the opportunity to put a municipal complex on it if they wanted to, but maybe in the interim, use it as some kind of active and passive recreation.
Okay.
Mr. Mazeris?
Well, and we certainly don't want to complicate the process, but we are working hard on that. And I'll throw this up as a suggestion to this board. Based on what we've heard so far, it may be of value to you to spend your time right now listening to the ultimate presentations on each one of the projects, so you get a feel for what they're really doing. And we could reconvene a DSD meeting maybe before your council meeting on November 21st, get clarification on all of these issues, and
That'd help.
then you can at least have the time to prepare. I'm starting to get a little concerned because and think there's a lot of moving parts that you're hearing right now, and we apologize profusely. We don't like to do that, but in defense of staff who I work with every day, this is sort of just came up just immediately based on what wasn't in the initial LOIs that we received. So it might be, again, valuable to you to listen to the presentations from each of them today. Maybe we can meet and convene before the meeting on November 21st, and you can go from there.
Councilmember Matheny?
Thank you. I agree with what Mr. Manzares was saying. We had the last meeting, we said, everybody come back with your final and best offer, and then it seems like everybody is throwing Hail Mary pitches at us now. They had typos they didn't understand, and maybe true, but it just seems like, we reviewed a package, so I don't know if it's that, okay, everybody, we'll step back and everybody makes another submittal to us. I kind of feel like we asked for final and best, and now everyone is.
But there's so much more stuff added to it now that you have done. I have asked questions. I think everybody's asked a whole lot of.
Right, and
to
again,
add to
Well,
it.
I think the stuff that I brought up is things that can be handled in the
Well-
contract, but then to come up and say, oops, we had a typo, we didn't mean that, that's a big typo to make, I'm not
not
sure
worried about
about that.
that,
But, I feel like we asked for final and best, and then now we're just kind of freewheeling it, like what's the next thing we're gonna get, I don't know. I don't know if we need to step back and have another submittal and then review those now that everyone understands more.
I'd like to hear the presentations, and
I
if
do
it's not,
too,
if it's not crystal
presentation.
clear of we want this one is the best.
But they're changing their presentation from their packages is my concern,
Yeah.
so.
I would suggest, and ask in the abundance of fairness to all three of these folks who've been very good to work with, and we've
Yes.
spent a lot of time with them. We certainly don't want to do that. You've heard from Titan, you've heard from AVEX. I think you should hear at least something from Equity, and then I think you should spend the time, at the very least, as Mr. Trace, with listening to the presentations, and then maybe after that you can decide where you are on it. And you may still be where you are, Ms. Matheny, on it, but because even if we are going to be able to. Even if we do move, as I suggested, and you try to do this before the next council meeting, I assure you, you're not going to have the time on that night to go through presentations from each individual. So you
Right.
might as well use the time today.
Okay.
And if I may.
Are we time limiting these presentations?
Mine will be short, so you don't have to worry.
Well, I would ask if before you do that, at least you hear
Mr.
from
Equity.
Equity before you do it.
Thank you. Would Equity like to speak?
I'm sorry, is that-
No.
I'm sorry.
You have anything?
Mayor,
To add.
if I could also add.
Yes.
The deputy city clerk just pointed out to me that for the November 21st, our agenda deadline is tomorrow. So if we receive new packets, we're not going to be able to do it for November 21st.
Well, respectfully, and this is for a special meeting of the DSD. I certainly think we can put the information together and get it into a DSD agenda meeting, which is what you'd have on the 21st.
Right.
The city council agenda packet is a lot big, as you all know, it's a lot bigger process and a lot bigger issues. So we're really basically going to be restating this in the agenda, restating what you see today, and just in some different format. So I think you probably can get it done.
Dan, I could have 4 or 5 days to.
Okay.
If we go to that point, I think the individuals, if they're still interested in acquiring this property, are going to jump through whatever hoops you tell them to jump
Okay,
through.
gotcha. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mike LaQuarrie, Liquuri, on behalf of Equity and Gentry. We took the meeting with staff pretty clearly as far as timing. We're not, our LOI stands. We're comfortable with the closing timing that we put in there, and we're confident that during the inspection period, we believe we can get through conceptual master plan and concept plan approval and the development agreement, which would allow us to close 15 days after that, at the end of the IP.
Have any questions? Thank you very much. Any objections to moving forward with the presentations?
Oh, sir.
Can we put a time limit on it?
10 minutes? Maybe.
How long are they?
They're short.
As short as it is, we
Okay.
said. All right,
Okay.
so who's up first?
Let's try it.
Equity is first. It's based on the same order as the
Yes.
as the packets. The presentations are in the same
Okay,
order.
be fine. Equities.
Again, Mike LaQuarrie on behalf of Equity and Gentry. I'm going to talk about the revised offer, a little update on our site plan, and then wrap it up with why we believe we're the best selection. The revised offer, we went back and increased the value of our offer for the DSD parcels up to $4.5 million, and our LOI for the City of St. Cloud parcels was $1.625 million. Specifically to the DSD, we're putting $25,000 up upon signing the contract, and $200,000 total will be non-refundable at the end of the inspection period. Our inspection period is 90 days, and our closing is 15 days after the IP ends or 15 days after the satisfaction of the conditions precedent. Our conditions, as I've already mentioned, conceptual master plan and concept plan approval revision from the City of St. Cloud for our site plan, the approved development agreement for the Crossroad connection from Budinger and Canoe Creek, and then that the Stevens CDD-A bonds remain in place and are not in default. The CDD-B bonds are paid in full. Any delinquent taxes or assessments are paid in full and the liens are satisfied, and any existing property contracts are satisfied or canceled. There was some discussion during the last meeting about dirt contingency. We have no dirt contingency. We've set our site plan up to where we believe we can get all the dirt we need from the planned pond excavation on our site plan. Here's a closing timeline, hypothetically assuming that the contract is agreed to on the 2nd of December. We have no corporate approvals required for Equity or Gentry to sign that contract. The inspection period begins and ends on March 1st. 15 days after that is March 16th. That is when we believe the earliest closing date is, assuming the 12/2 contract date. Due diligence work has already begun on the site on our part. We've looked at this for months, and we plan to pursue the conceptual master plan and concept plan approval, as well as the development agreement during the 90-day inspection period, and we believe we can get that done during the 90 days. If one of those slides, then the closing timeline slides day for day to when those final agreements get satisfied. Here's a look at our site plan. Starting from south to north again, the single family on the south side of the property. The yellow would be front load. We anticipate somewhere between 150 and 175 units. The orange are rear load, somewhere between 50 to 100. The difference in the rear load is whether or not it's going to be single family or potentially townhome. And that, so the higher number would be if it's townhome, the lower number would be if it's single family detached. There's a 3.4 acre linear park shown bisecting the property and an extensive trail system that connects from east to west from the current eastern boundary all the way over to the existing trail just above St. Cloud Elementary School to get a good connectivity there so students and parents can walk kids to school if they need to. We have passive recreation opportunities throughout the site, and we also have north-south connectivity from the residential into the mixed use. Going up to that north side, you'll see the continued trail system. It goes to the north of the sites along the ponds. The pink area that we have designated as mixed use is non-residential. We're talking commercial retail outparcels as well as a central plaza in the middle of it. The brown area is a multifamily site, approximately 15 acres. We believe that'll hold about 275 units. And after talking with several folks, we believe that there's a good opportunity for a market rate apartment complex there. Why Equity and Gentry? We've been here all along. We've been interested in this project for months, and we continue to be interested. We have local business insight and knowledge. We believe we have the opportunity to develop a mixed-use site that develops not only the community but also the city. We have a long-term interest in the success of the project, and we believe we have a quick closing for both properties with reasonable contingencies that can be handled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. On one of your first slides, you had the purchase price of the city property at like 1.6 something, but the paper I have here.
That's because
Ms.
staff,
Miller-
if you remember, staff's recommendation was
Right, I just want
that.
him to confirm that that's price, what price are you offering to buy the city property for?
The 1.625 is what the LOI says. If the city wants to potentially renegotiate at that price, we will have that discussion.
Okay.
But right now, the LOI is where the number is.
Any other question? Thank you very much, Mike.
I'm sorry, one question. At the beginning, I heard you're gonna put $25,000 down, I think 200,000.
At the end of the inspection period, yes, sir.
Yeah. Dan, I thought you and I mentioned 300?
That's just the DSD. If you take the city pieces, then you'll get up to
Okay,
the
then I get up-
$300,000
Then
number.
I get up, oh, okay.
I limited this primarily just to the DSD discussion.
I look for all that money.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Mike. Titan Properties?
I'm not sure which button I choose here, but there we are. Thank you again for letting me address the commission. Dale Avery with Titan Properties. In our purchase offer, you can see that we had two options for the 143 acres. I thought last time when we were here in front of the commission, we had heard something about maybe having an option to keep that 16 acres for the future. I sort of took that to heart, thought that was a good idea, maybe for parks now, maybe for a municipal complex later. We as well have a 90-day inspection period, a $100,000 deposit initially. I think it's 25 and 75. On the 51 acres, our purchase price is $2 million, and that should say on both of those, close 15 days after the concept plan revision and the site plan approval and the development agreement. Again, I apologize for that mistake. Our concept was, in the purple you can see, that was either going to be the interim park concept or possibly some senior living down on that location. We have the single family located in the center of the site and the market rate apartment complex backing up to that greenbelt area, and then the commercial out there being bisected by the east-west road. So we have, and we have a little neighborhood commercial over there by the school. That just shows a little bigger layout of how we thought the plan would look. And this is sort of a framework of just the residential. We have 4 different product types in there. We have 2 different single-family types and actually 3 different single-family types and a townhome attached site on this concept plan. So we have proposed about 243 units. 91 of them are detached and 150 are attached. And we were able to meet the minimum density of mixed-use zoning there. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
AVEX.
Hello again, Eric Marks with Avex Homes and Avalon Park Group, and I'll skip through about 3 slides just to try to go a little quicker.
I just wanted to be fair. I didn't
No,
want
I-
somebody to get up and do a 45-minute presentation and then.
Just need a few. So when I was here last, I heard pretty clearly the desire for a more mixed-use project. And so I met with our team more from the Avalon Park Group side than the AVEX side, knowing that we all pretty much had the same single family in the project. And I hope you're all familiar with Avalon Park. It's one of the few true TND projects that have been built in Central Florida with a town center that is centralized within the community with true vertically mixed-use buildings. And so if y'all, can somebody fast forward a couple? Thank you, I have it. I guess it's me that can do it. Okay. So I met with my group at Avalon Park, and we put together a much more T&D mixed-use type of project. You can see that even the residential is set up more in a conventional block style. The commercial pushes the buildings up to the front of the street, and I'll show you in a moment what we envision for that commercial building up front. It's a building we've built multiple times. The 3 acres, I think, can be misleading. I heard somebody make a point about that. 3 acres can be 50,000 square feet. 3 acres can be 10,000 square feet. It's really a question of whether you're going to incorporate the mixed-use concepts, some of the traditional design concepts, pushing buildings up the street front so that it gives you more of that urban feel. And we have the experience of having done it. And I can show you a few buildings that we built that I, at least for that first parcel, envision. And I think, as David said rightly, the market's really going to push. I think you need some directional commitment from whoever you select. And I'm here today to say I commit. It's our intention to build the type of building I'm going to show you for an initial commercial building up in the front, and then we'd transition back off of that if the commercial makes more sense as we move excuse me, further off of Canoe Creek, then we would add more commercial. We have a lot of parks. It's a very walkable plan and very interconnected. We looked at the impact fee credit agreement you did for the road, and the sole condition we have on that was just to enter into a similar agreement for us. We think that'll be quick and simple and easy. So we did incorporate the urban design concepts, the deal with the relationship of the buildings to streets, the block sizes and connectivity, centralized parks and open space, walkable neighborhoods, and a sustainable design with homes and landscaping that use things like xeriscape and energy efficiency. As the primary builder in this project on the AVEX side, I can tell you that would be our intention here, is to build a modern product that really took into consideration the sustainable elements that we think are appropriate for the site. So in Avalon Park, we built a couple of these, well, probably 4 at this point, of these vertically mixed-use buildings with retail on the ground and apartments over. They're very difficult to build. They're not very easily financed. They're non-traditional, especially when you're in the suburbs. It's something we did at our own expense as we went through the process. We have built them, we've managed them, we've brought them up to occupancy. And I will tell you, once we've gotten them up and running, we've been able to put them into the permanent market, which now makes them a much more viable and successful project. But it's not something that your conventional developer who's solely driven by quick return would do. And so we've done a number of these. They have arcades in the front. They're pedestrian friendly. They share parking, which is interesting that it really does work, that the mix of parking allows us between the residential and the commercial to reduce the total parking footprint. And it's really been a nice success story there. Here's another view of one of those buildings. This building is tenanted by restaurants. The YMCA has a significant spot in this building, which was kind of a neat deal we did with the YMCA. And as I said, that would be the intention, to do that on the frontage on Canoe Creek. So our offer, and I may come back to this slide, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the public safety building. I actually attended the last committee meeting for your public safety committee, and it was a good experience. I think there's some fantastic ideas being bounced around. One of them is 16 acres for a facility that really could serve, I think, this city for the next 50 years. I think, and I don't pretend to even begin to say that the chief of police has endorsed this. I think stepping back, looking at some others, starting with something like a 6 to 8 acre site to give you that presence, and in a new building that has enough size and space, which is probably between 50 and 70,000 square feet, would work. And what I proposed in our offer was a public-private partnership. So we've done over 10 of these. We've built 3 huge schools for Orange County Public Schools, leased them back to them for a year plus, while they got their budget in order to be able to pay for the schools, and then they bought those schools back from us. We've done public-private partnerships on roads, on football stadiums. There's a number of different opportunities that we've taken advantage of and done in whole over $60 million of public-private partnerships. And so it may not be the right time or the right place for this, but I put it out there as an option during the inspection period as a way to maybe kickstart your public safety building to try to do a public-private partnership, take 6 acres here and try to work it into the plan. So let me address the offers that we've made. I don't pretend that it was a typo. It was not a typo. The conclusion on the PUD question is that the PUD is just not necessary. So the effective offer that we've made is to close 30 days after the conceptual plan does. It's 15 days difference from what you've heard from everybody else. If that's a deal killer, we can certainly work on getting to a 15 days to close. I've found that realistically, when you're trying to get all the pieces and parts in place, trying to close 15 days after a contingency is very challenging. So we put 30 days. Otherwise, I think our offers look the same in that regard. Honestly, I think our plans all look pretty similar at this point. We specifically have said that we're assuming the A bonds. I'm not positive that everybody's done that. I think that's been the clear direction, but I think that's an important item because it's a $1.2+ million difference in the offers. We've asked for a development agreement similar to one that's already been negotiated, a very simple contingency, and then we've offered the public-private partnership for the public safety building. With all of that, our offer is $5.125 million on the DSD property, which is significantly higher than what you've seen from other offers. And then on the 54-acre parcel that the city owns, we've offered $1.9 million on that. So that's again, significantly higher than what's been offered. Again, a 90-day due diligence and then that same contingency, and I think they all tie together. One important point, the way we submitted our offers is if the city decides that they're not ready to part with the acreage that was intended for the public safety building, our offer at 5.125 stands on the DSD property. The two are separable. We don't want to buy the city property without the DSD property, but the reverse works fine. We would take the DSD property if you wanted to retain the city property. So we're flexible in that regard.
Anything else?
That's it.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to leave this up here.
Do we have any further discussion? Can we, go ahead.
Do, Ms. Miller, do you want to go through like staff recommendations and why? And, because staff has reviewed this and.
Our recommendation was simply for the closing time. That was why. Essentially, the projects themselves are quite similar with a mix of single-family, multifamily, single-family attached, and small areas of commercial and parks. And the closing happening in March before we have to pay the taxes is essentially staff's goal.
You got it right now.
Dan, do you have something?
I was just going to agree with what Mrs. Miller just said. And again, our recommendation was based on the LOIs as submitted, and you've heard some changes to it. I thought I just heard Mr. Marks say that his proposal could potentially be solely with regard to the DSD property.
Yes, I heard that.
And that, I didn't see that anywhere in the LOIs. Not clearly.
I think it was because others clearly said that it was contingent on
Okay.
the city-owned
All right,
property.
so I may have missed that personally, I apologize for that. So I just want to make sure the board understands that their option would mean that the city could retain that other piece that was originally bought for a public safety complex.
Councilmember Trace.
So I'm just kind of going through some of my thought process on this. I kind of did a little table of all the things that are equal and then all the things that are different between all the offers. So on the equal side, everyone's got about the same closing timing, closing around March, with some of these revisions that have been made. Everyone wants the road agreement for the connection. Deposits are somewhat similar. Bond payouts are pretty much similar. And then I feel like all three groups are highly capable of, performing on this project. Some of the differences are the public safety complex, us kind of making a decision, do we want to move forward with the public safety complex on Stevens North or not? The amount of non-residential, there's a pretty big disparity between the three offers, and the sales price. So, and I think each one of those correspond to each one of the prospective buyers have that as their strength. Their differences are their strengths. It's just kind of a matter of who do we feel, do we want highest price, do we want the public safety complex, or do we want kind of a higher amount of non-residential between the three offers.
Do we have any motion to this point, or? Are we wanting to wait, break back? Or ask you?
So I guess I've been up here the longest, well, Dan beat me, but I definitely don't want to rush this. I mean, we're talking, about, 10 days or so. I would rather wait, clean this up, get a nice one so it doesn't have scribbles all over it like it has right now. I thought I knew exactly who I wanted. Now I'm just, wow. It's once everybody sort of lined themselves up.
It did kind of change it to me.
Yeah, and everyone knows that there's no lie. I'm a big non-residential fan. So if there's some way on some of these 3 acres and stuff, and I love the Avon Park thing you got there, but if you can give me the square footage, that would be a lot better, easier decision to make. Because again, it's not based under the acreage; it's based under what you're building there. So
We wanted them to.
I did like the complex, though.
So what's our pleasure? Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Askew. I feel like we've got scrambled eggs now. And, I mean, I understand the urgency to close, but then again, do we make a $7 million deal quickly because of a $200,000 pending tax bill? I mean,
Right.
I don't know that should be like the driving goal to like make the decision hastily.
Ms. Harris.
And I just wanted, one of the reasons why we made the initial suggestion, I think you could still stay on the same path if you were to roll this decision over till November 21st. We have a DSD meeting set for December 2nd.
We haven't finalized it.
Right, I think it's the first Thursday in December.
Right.
Which would put us right in that first week to basically get the contract approved. The city contract would come over December 5th. City contract would be, we would move forward with that also, and so we'd be right in that same, on that same timeframe.
Okay. Are we in agreement then to roll to the 21st?
You get a nod from me.
Okay.
Do we need to give further direction to the?
I think you've had a good discussion on it, and I think everybody, including staff, has heard it loud and clear where you are. So if that's the consensus of the board, we'll put it back on the agenda on the 21st.
And I'll just ask that they start working on it immediately, and I'll work with Mr. Kalkanis.
Yeah, we really would like any revisions they have by Monday.
And Monday's a holiday.
They can get them to me, and I'll have them for you on Tuesday. Because I'm working Monday.
So Dan, we're looking to try and get all 3 of these to get their best bang for the buck.
No.
Tell us exactly what you want.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Cooper. Maybe that's what we were looking at. I think
I thought we were looking at that.
I think
what we're looking
you heard a lot of changes to the
Today. Yes.
I think you want to see those changes in some sort of format that staff can put into a
Everybody can
good
understand.
comparable thing. I don't think we want to talk about renegotiating prices or anything like that.
No.
It's more along the lines of the closing contingencies, And that's what you want to see, having seen the presentations now.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify, the only changes that are allowed to be made are the ones they mentioned there? Or if people go back and they're like, hey, we want to make a change, they're not, I mean, I'm saying, for me, I'd be like, okay, final and best again, and
Right,
they have the
okay.
opportunity to
Sure.
reshuffle the deck if they want. I mean, I don't really
Sure.
think,
That's your call, yes.
I mean, that's my personal feeling, I don't know.
Sure. Same with me.
Councilmember Trace.
And if we're trying to keep this on that March timeline, can you guys communicate to the applicants what submittal deadline they'd have to get the site plan through the process before that March deadline?
We would request that whoever we enter into a contract with, that the DSD would authorize them to immediately submit their applications rather than having to wait for a contract.
Yeah, I
if
just want to
they're
know
willing
the
to do that.
back-end date, because if they submit a day after whatever that deadline is, and it's kind of moot anyway of the March deadline.
Yeah, we can do that. We had already worked on December 2nd as being a date, and that could get them in January. Mr. Anderson is trying to tell me something, though.
Baseball signs. You went a whole hour without at the microphone.
Andre Anderson, Planning Zone Director. I was trying to get Ms. Miller's attention that it's only for concept plan, no site plan.
Sorry.
Yeah, you said site plan, that's a whole nother process. Okay.
Very true. Very true. So,
Are we in agreement? Do
I think we
you
got-
guys know what to do?
Okay.
Done?
We're done on that issue.
Do we have anything else?
You're not going to take, I just had two brief comments on two other parts. First of all, just to let you know that the Alliance project, which is in the corporate campus, lots 8C, 9, and 10, they did complete their due diligence period. We received, the escrow agent received the second deposit of $100,000 on that project, and they're moving forward towards a closing. We're waiting to get a final closing schedule so we can report back to you on when those pieces would close. And the other item is we wanted just to get a little nod from this board so that we can move forward with potentially another agreement at your December meeting. We received an offer for Tract 8A at the corporate campus, which is 3.31 acres. That offer is for $612,350, about $185,000 per acre. And so we want to just make you aware of it. We did receive a letter of intent on it, but as has been our practice in the past, with the consensus of this board, we will begin to negotiate a contract with these prospective buyers to have it on your agenda in December for final approval.
You certainly have, I don't
Yes.
hear any objections from the board.
Okay, that's all we have for the DSD meeting tonight.
Well, one question I had on the LOI, the 30-day extensions, the 3 30-day extensions on the IP, can we make those extra deposits non-refundable?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, it's a good point.
Or non-applicable to the
Yes.
purchase price?
Anything else? We're adjourned.